This month's topic is wildfire preparedness, and I will let our speakers take it away and introduce themselves a little further. Thank you.
Well, again, why don't we just go in the order that we'll do that, and I'll introduce myself last and jump right into the presentation. So Adam, say hello real quick.
Good evening, Adam Moore with the Colorado State Forest Service, based in our Alamosa field office. So I serve the entire San Luis Valley. And excuse my voice today, I'm getting over a cold, so I might cough occasionally tonight.
Sorry to hear that, Adam. All right, and Art, please jump on and tell everybody who you are.
Okay, good evening. I'm Art Whitner. I'm the Rio Grande County Emergency Manager and Deputy Coroner. Was honored to be invited by yourself and Adam just to give some insight as to what actually happens during a pre-evacuation and an actual evacuation. So I look forward to hearing Adam and also presenting my part.
Awesome, great. Thanks for coming on, Art. We sure appreciate it tonight. So yeah, and I'll get started. I'll launch right into it. And while I'm talking here, I'll place the share screen on and get the PowerPoint going. I got a pretty short section today. I'm going to whiz through it just because I don't think the bottom line is you'll understand we're at, and my button isn't sharing. There it is. You know, we're in fire danger, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. So where is my slideshow from the beginning? There it is. Again, I'm Greg Goodland. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for the Rio Grande National Forest. And, you know, I'm kind of qualified to talk about this, though, not my current job, but I spent 16 years as a fire prevention officer on the San Carlos Ranger District, just over the hill from us on the Sangres there. And did a lot of these. I've done some of these with Adam in person, online, and I'm just glad to be here. It's something I'm very passionate about. And I sure hope that you know, we learn a little something and we can have good conversations about this subject that'll be around the rest of our lives and everybody that will ever know lives. So why don't we learn how to live with wildfire? Again, I'm going to talk about the fire season outlook and kind of what that means to us. So when you talk about a fire season outlook, you know, really what we're trying to figure out is to the best of our ability, what we're facing over the next 4 to 6, 7 months, maybe. And so we always start every spring. I've been asked this question for my entire Forest Service career, which in a month I'll be starting my 30th year. And this question is always the same form of this question. What's the fire season going to be like this year? And as you can see, the way I always answered it is by looking into the photograph in that lower left-hand corner. I don't know is always my answer. We'll see, and ask me that question in October is kind of how I've responded. But sadly enough, we try to predict what the fire season is going to be like this year. And I don't really mean it sadly. I mean, we have to do it. And we've got a lot of tools. And I think they do a pretty good job of telling us what we're up against. And the reason why we need to do that is so we can plan accordingly. If we don't get the worst case scenario, all the better. But if we do get it and we've planned for it, then we're in well positioned. And when I say we, you know, most of the stuff I'm referring to here is our federal fire agencies, but we work so very closely with our state and county agencies that really we is a collective we, anybody that's in the fire business. So we have those tools that you can see on the screen. And one of them that I think really happens to be overlooked is that local historical knowledge at the bottom. And that's a tool that can be invaluable in many fire situations. So we think about talking to the people that have been here all their lives. Some of our county commissioners, et cetera, grew up in these counties and have been here for 60 years. They've seen a thing or two. So, but the rest of them are products that our predictive services folks and the weather service folks put out and the natural resources folks put out. And we'll go through a couple of those real quick. The products that they really come up with, though, are what we see here. And this is the primary tool that I like to reference when I'm talking about fire season outlook. And right now, what you're seeing is that significant wildland fire potential outlook for, they do 4 months in a row. So, but the important months for me are right here, May and June. And what you're looking at when you look at the state of Colorado is that red stuff. And that red stuff covers where we are, and that says that we have a greater than normal chance to have more significant wildland fires in our area for those 2 months that we're seeing. And if you look at Colorado in the June, the bulk of the state is covered there. So when we're doing that planning, we think, okay, we could be in bad situations, but so could our neighbors. And if you look at that, all of New Mexico, most of Colorado, most of Arizona, parts of Texas and Kansas, that means this whole region is going to be likely to be, let me rephrase that, to be in pretty similar conditions and with availability for larger, more difficult to control fires. So that paints a pretty difficult picture to swallow. And then what we'll do is we'll go to the next one and make it even worse. We're showing that the drought impact, the drought monitor there, and that's the most recent one just a few days back here. And it's showing us in the severe drought. No, wait a minute, I get those wrong. Yeah, severe drought, and it is expected to go into an extreme drought, real close. So, and that next product will come out on the 29th, I believe. So again, this is one of those tools we use. What's it going to be like now? What is it like now? And estimating what is it going to be like in a month when we've had no significant changes in the weather patterns. Another tool we use is the snowpack. This is the most recent product that they came out with on the snowpack, and it's just a couple of days old. And the bottom line is you look at that red that's covering all of southern Colorado, and that's telling you a story. We're way below normal snowpack. But what that's kind of leading to is that we have a lot less water in the soils and a lot less water in the streams. So should we be needing water to fight fire in various places, sometimes we'll be looking for water in places that is traditionally there, and we're going to have to plan that it may not be there this year. In fact, my last bullet there, I'm talking about area streams. I know the Conejos River, and in fact, I heard today the Rio Grande rivers have both already peaked in their runoff. According to the folks that I was talking to, that means they are over a month early for peak runoff. That should raise some eyebrows, as I've said before. So bottom line is those that the forecasters are in fact predicting that the monsoon will arrive. That's a lot of words on the left there, and that's just a quote from basically the products that they gave us. But the bottom line is if you look at the right slide and you see that significant wildland fire potential outlook, and our area is back to normal. And so let's just evaluate what that means, back to normal. That means we could still have large fires. We could still have several fires. It just means that the chances are likely reduced because the monsoon is forecast to be affecting us at that point. And you can clearly see that it's that way because Arizona and New Mexico and the southeastern Utah are also in the same boat, which are the traditional areas that are affected by the North American monsoon. So what happens though if the monsoon doesn't arrive? Well, these firefighting resources that I've talked about earlier, our state and local and county and federal partners are all talking about this. So we'll probably be increasing the fire restrictions. We'll talk more about restrictions in a little bit. We've brought on fire patrols for the Rio Grande National Forest. We got a guy coming in from California on Friday night, I believe. We're also bringing in additional initial attack resources that might bolster our local resources in the event of fire ignition. One of the things that we consider is bringing in fire prevention teams who go out there into the communities, produce all kinds of products for us to use, and help get the word out that we're hot and dry and we just can't risk fire starting activities. And then of course, there is that higher risk of having larger fires and having more fires. So we're trying to make sure that we address that risk in all the manners that we have within our control, which isn't that many. But one of those elements or tactics that we use is fire restrictions, as I set up here. And with fire restrictions, and actually I'll stop for just a second at the top for those that are on. We've heard the term fire ban all our life. The feds that I happen to be a part of for a long time, we use the word restrictions because we are restricting activities. Is it a fire ban? Absolutely. But there are other activities that aren't as much fire related, but certainly can cause fire. And I think that's mostly why we go to the term. So what are fire restrictions? They're a tool. We try to use them to stop people from conducting activities that are known to cause fires. All right. You know, they're not going to stop all the fires. We can't restrict or forbid or prohibit all those activities that could start fires to a degree. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you can see we have the 3 levels, and mostly in our area, it's great because we have these counties that are on board with us now. We do a great job of coordinating. So I'll shoot to the next one and talk about these criteria just briefly. So these are the 5 criteria that the federal agencies use, and most of our counties are with us as well. Energy release component, all that is it's a mathematical computation of how hot a fire will burn once it gets started. 1,000-hour fuel moistures are basically 3 to 6 inch logs. And if they get into a critical area, then that could be a problem. And that would encourage fires to remain burning and hot. And the other 2 things, well, the zone preparedness level, Pueblo zone that we're in is currently at 3. Do we have enough firefighters? And what is the long-term weather forecast? Right now, it's not looking favorable. So stage 1 fire restrictions basically says you can't have a campfire unless you're in one of our developed recreation sites. Most of our counties and state partners have the same kind of thing. If you have one of those constructed fire rings, should be good to go. If you don't, you're not good to go. Smoking in the areas, chainsaws, blasting, explosives, come on, give me a break. Shouldn't be using those anyway out there, but, and of course, as I mentioned there, this is the quick list of what is prohibited. Basically, what I'm saying is check the law, whether you're on county, state, or federal lands. Make sure you know what the law is before you go out there. And addressing that cute little icon at the bottom, no fireworks. Most state lands, all federal lands in this area, fireworks are always illegal and they always should be. I'll never support the fact that they should be out there ever. And that's a great thing. So going on to the next one, we have stage 2 fire restrictions, and that's things are getting worse. So now the campfires aren't allowed in the developed recreation sites. Smoking instead of a cleared area, now it's only inside the building. And of course, the chainsaws and combustion engines, you got to have the right working equipment, etc. The big thing with stage 2 is you can't even park your vehicles off the road unless it's vegetation free. Stage 3 fire restrictions basically would be a forest closure. That means things have gotten into such dire conditions that we basically think it's not prudent to have people in the forest where there's even any risk of starting a fire. The three forests in New Mexico, Jeffrey, I bet you know that, the Carson, the Santa Fe, and most of the Cibola forest have now gone into stage 3 fire restrictions that will be in effect tomorrow morning. That means you can't go to that forest, stay home. I hope we never get to that, but that's the way it is. So shutting down my part of the presentation tonight, you know, I think it's really important that we all understand wildfires are going to happen. And so how we respond to this is up to us, right? We do the best we can. We educate people. We restrict actions. And we try to ensure that we know that we're going to have a fire and how to deal with it when we get there, which is a great segue to introducing or reintroducing Adam Moore and how to prepare your home for a wildfire.
All right, thanks, Greg. And thanks for the overview of how fire restrictions occur and what the outlook might look for the season. And I'm going to hopefully successfully share my screen. All right, can everybody see the screen?
Looks
Sure
good.
can.
Yeah, we can.
All right, thanks. So I'm going to roll through some basics on how to prepare your home for a wildfire. And I would like to say also that our office is available to individually meet with homeowners and also to meet with communities. So for example, last summer I spoke at the Jasper HOA annual meeting and gave some advice to residents there. So that opportunity is available for anybody within the San Luis Valley. Okay, so a lot of this is based off of our new publication. And I say new because it came out about a year ago, this last year. And we have hard copies of these in our office and digital copies, but we have already produced and distributed over 15,000 of these in the last year. So there's a high demand within the state of Colorado for people to prepare themselves. And part of that reason is because within Colorado is over half of the population lives in the area we call the wildland urban interface. So that place where homes interact with natural vegetation. So that's, excuse me, that's trees, that's shrubs, that's grasses, but anything that can burn. So basically anything besides the sidewalks and the streets, if you're not living in downtown Denver, means you could qualify. So the idea of the home ignition zone is it takes into account the house and how it's constructed, and then different zones out from the house and what we would do to modify the vegetation there to decrease the chances of a fire getting close to your house. So before we get into those details, a little bit on how fires start homes. So you have the radiant heat factor. So you're standing around a campfire, you get nice and warm. Well, you have to have a really extreme amount of heat fairly close to a house to have houses catch on fire by radiant heat. Very unlikely situation. The other situation is flames moving up against the house. And that's something we'll easily talk about in the presentation. But the most common way of houses actually burning in wildfires is the embers flying from the fire and landing close to the house, on the house, different parts of the house, and catching it on fire. And these embers can fly 1 mile, 2 miles, 4 miles in front of the fire. So just because there's a fire that's 10 miles away, is it could be moving in your direction and throwing embers towards your house. So preparation is key no matter where your property is. So just an idea of what defensible space is like, and that's where we reduce that vegetation close to the home. We have a little before and after picture here where on the left, you can't even see the house itself. On the right, you can see the house. We can see there's less ladder fuels, there's less vegetation that can bring a fire of high intensity up to the house. Okay, so we're going to talk mostly about vegetation and little things around the house, but there's also a whole bunch of specific information out there. So for example, attics and decks and fencing and how those can specifically affect your house. And those are available from the National Fire Protection Association's website. And we have a link on our website as well. And I'll put that up in the chat after I'm done presenting. Okay, so we'll go over some of the best practices, things that can show and be the biggest factors on your house starting on fire. So one is having a Class A rated roof. So basically anything besides a wooden shake shingle roof is the preferred method of keeping your house nice and dry. Keeping the leaves and gutters, decks free from debris. Remember those embers, they can land in all those little spots and catch it on fire. So if you think about where do you have to rake and clean up before a guest comes in, those are the same spots that the embers want to land as well. Okay, having the vents into your house, having them screened because those embers can blow up into the house that way and catch it on fire. So screened with 1/8 of an inch screen or smaller. This includes ones at the foundation, as well as ones such as dryer vents and other small ones. Having tempered glass, preferably 2 panes or more, so that if there is enough radiant heat, you have 2 layers of protection and the heat won't break the windows for embers to land in the house after that. Having at least 6 inches of vertical clearance. So now if we have embers that land close, we don't have wood, something that's flammable right next to where the vegetation is that could catch fire. Replacing combustible fences with something that's non-combustible. So basically your fence is a wick bringing flames from further out in the meadow or in the woods right up to your house. And we want to break that chain so that it doesn't get all the way to your house. All right, so we're going to go over the couple different zones. So around the house, we divided up into 3 different zones. So we'll go over zone 1 first, and that is closest to the house, includes the house and the 5 feet closest to the house. The idea here is to keep the flames from touching the house and keep the embers from landing in anything in that area that would catch the house on fire. So we're moving that flammable vegetation next to the house. So we have nice rock here, but we also have some shrub right next to the house as well. So this would include potentially landscaping with mulch you have, maybe replace the mulch with some type of rock instead. Okay, having firewood, this is a big no-no on the house, on the deck, next to the house. But you can think about it, these are all little spots, nooks and crannies in that firewood pile for those embers to land. And we have firewood because it burns. So having that in a burnable spot next to the house is not good. Recommendation is 30 feet from the house. Okay, making sure we don't have trees and branches that are overhanging the chimney or underneath the eaves of the house, because they're going to bring flames right to the house and be able to catch it on fire, or have, if you're having a fire in the house, potentially without a spark arrestor, it could catch the tree on fire and then drop stuff right on the house. Okay, regularly removing the pine needles and other debris from those decks and gutters. So like I said before, we want to decrease the spots where the embers can land and catch that house on fire. And then having, after you clean them up, disposing of them, keeping them far away, and preferably having nothing flammable, and preferably even more so an unflammable, so nothing flammable like vegetation, but then even in non-flammable barriers such as rocks or maybe a concrete pathway or something around the house that keeps flames from getting to the house. And it also, in my mind, creates a nice visual barrier where you see that and you're like, oh, I should clean that. Not using under the deck for storage, nooks and crannies again. Okay, so now we move on to zone 2. So this is 5 to 30 feet from the house. We want to decrease the intensity of the fire here. So we want to keep the chances, the intensity down, but we can have some vegetation in that area. So grass, 4 inches or less in height if you have it. If you can have the moisture, keep it green. You don't want to have large accumulations of logs, slashes, branch, anything that can be flammable and keep the fire moving towards the house. We want to try to create space of 10 feet between the branches of trees. But you may still leave a couple little groups of trees if you have increased spacing between them. So the idea behind the spacing is that we don't have an active crown fire that brings the flames and intensity close to the house. Removing the ladder fuels, and so this includes pruning up trees and the small shrubs and small trees that can bring the fire from the ground up into the top of the trees where it becomes difficult to suppress. Pruning those branches 6 to 10 feet tall, or a third the height of a tree. So we wouldn't prune a 12-foot tree 10 feet tall. It would look kind of silly. Okay, removing some of those stressed, dead and dying trees. So a lot of insects and diseases out there that can affect trees. And oftentimes the removal of these stressed trees can get you a far way into creating a lot of your defensible space around the home. Okay, removing common ground juniper, creeping juniper, real highly flammable. We jokingly call it green kerosene because of how flammable it is and how tall of flames it can make in an area. You can keep shrubs in that area, but you don't want to keep any that are growing under trees, and you want to keep them from being within the close distance to a tree as well. And then if you do have shrubs in there, make sure that they're not full of a bunch of dead stalks as well. And then within the trees is you want to have some spacing, so 2.5 times their height. So if we have a 4-foot shrub, we'd want to have them approximately 10 feet apart from each other. Okay, then we move into zone 3. So this is further out from the house. This is where we want to still try to keep the fire on the ground, but we can have a little bit more vegetation. And this is kind of a transition from the safety of your house out into the natural surroundings. So you don't necessarily need to mow your grass. We want to watch for other hazards and ladder fuels still and reduce them as much as possible. We can still want to have crown spacing between the trees, but we can have them a little bit closer. So 6 to 10 feet instead of 10 feet like in the zones closer to the house. And we can still have clusters if we have the larger spacing. And one idea is we also like to have just kind of open meadows and a mosaic of space around the house as well. So it's not just a tree every consistent 6 to 10 feet. And you can do, and we don't want to see any of the vegetation or slash kept in zones 1 and 2, but in zone 3, we can leave a little bit of the slash as long as it's not too tall in height or built up too deep and too close to other things you want to protect, like other trees. And moving forwards, we are aware that doing mitigation can cost money. And so the state of Colorado does have this wildfire mitigation measure subtraction. So if you're a resident of Colorado and you have expenses associated with creating defensible space, so this could be you pay a contractor to do some work. Maybe you have some rock delivered for space around the house to reduce flames getting close, is you can write parts of that off on your taxes. And then I'm going to put a little bit of a plug in on June 24th down in the Conejos Peak Ranger District. We're going to be doing a tour, approximately 5 to 7. We're working on the details, where we're going to look at a prescribed burn the U.S. Forest Service did, and then talk about some forest health issues, and then talk about emergency preparedness a little bit as well. So pay attention for more information on that to come. And that covers the quick and dirty. And I encourage you to reach out to our office for individually or for your community to have somebody come down and present and give you more details.
Muted too. I do this all the time. I'm still muted. All right, now I'm not. That's awesome, Adam. You know, I've heard that many times, and I still feel like there's these tiny little bits that I get out of that. So I'm going to keep asking you to come and help you when I can. We're going to get this word out here somehow. We're going to get everybody to do that stuff. So, well, and so I think a great way to bring art in is, we're going to have fires, as I mentioned earlier, and they're going to be in our homes, as we've heard a lot here over the last month or so with the fires down in New Mexico. And when that happens, we really need to make sure that we know what's going to happen. Those of us that live here, if we don't have a clue of what's going to happen, we should. And so let's bring art on and talk about this, running away from our homes. And if you've done the work that Adam suggested, you should be able to confidently run away from your home and go, it'll be there when I get back. See you later. I'm going to have a pizza somewhere. Art, you're on, sir. Still muted, Art.
All right, I'm going to try and do this and see if I can share my screen.
We're going to get it. It's looking good so far.
Can you see my screen?
We got you.
Right on. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so let me do this so I can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so basically, everything that Adam has spoken about and getting your home prepared for a fire will also transcend into preparing for an evacuation and actually evacuating. So there's a difference. And preparing to evacuate is just that. You're making a reasonable plan, and over a period of time, you review that plan. You can always tweak it, whatever works for you and your family. However, it's important and imperative that you do have a plan and that you practice your plan. Now, when it comes to actually evacuating, that's when we put our plan into play and you get out of harm's way. You want to go to a predetermined destination. We'll just say here in Rio Grande County, our big fear is Wolf Creek Pass. So if we have a fire licking down Wolf Creek Pass, heading into the town of South Fork, you may know that it's going to hit your area before you're even warned of it. So, be aware of your surroundings and things that you might notice are different. You might check into it, and then let your family and friends know that, okay, I'm evacuating, taking the family, this is where I'm going. And then you want to update them through the process of evacuation until you get to your final destination. So preparing to evacuate, like I said, should be an ongoing process with reviews. Good practice is to start with a manageable plan. So what are the reasons that I need to evacuate? Well, we're in fire season now, so that's more than likely our number one, but there's a lot of other events. I hit on the natural events, not so much the man-made. So there's also flooding and snow events. You need to figure out what are the necessary items that I will need when I do evacuate. You're not going to pack up your entire house and put it on the back of your truck and go. So rule of thumb is money, number one. And I recommend in my Go kit, which I'll discuss a little bit later, I always have $50 in cash per person. That will get you out of harm's way, just in case there's no electronic means to use a debit card or a credit card. $50 is enough to get you far enough away, food along the way, or anything of that nature until you can get to more funds. Important papers. I have birth certificates, marriage certificates, your property deeds, insurance information, veterinarian records for your furry friends, and your medications. What I do is I have them all together in a place that if I'm told to get out, I'm not looking around for them. It's already there, and it's cutting out the time of me actually leaving the area to a safe destination. Oops. Sorry about that. So fuel for your vehicle, that's always important because you're going to be taking your vehicle to evacuate. What I have learned over the years, and I spent 40 years on the East Coast with hurricanes and flooding there as a firefighter, I always tell people, keep at least a half a tank of fuel at all times. This will get you out of the danger area to a safe place so you can top off and then continue on to your final destination. Stay informed and tune into weather conditions and tuned into changing weather conditions or other potential hazards in nearby areas that may affect you. Right now, they've got a fire in Archuleta County that is heading north of Pagosa Springs, and I was not here for the West Fork fire, but a lot of people are saying it's potentially going to be able to follow that path that the West Fork fire took if it continues on. Our pets, we all have pets, and a lot of times an animal will know something's wrong before you will or us. Pay attention to them. They are a pretty good warning system, and sometimes they're better than, you know, the news channels themselves. So pay attention to sudden moods and behaviors. And, you know, remember in planning for your evacuation, they also have needs. Bring their favorite toy, blanket, etc. This will make the transition from one place to another a lot easier on our pets. Livestock. A lot of people in the San Luis Valley do have horses and cattle and goats and sheep. And we do have a team of experts that are able to assist during an emergency, excuse me, and move livestock out of harm's way. However, you know, if the issue approaches faster than what we're able to if it cuts our time in getting the animals in trailers, things like that, they can actually cut fencing and go from one pasture to another and moving them. And so it's important to keep brand records updated and the number of cattle or livestock that you have. That way that when the recovery process starts, we can go through and sort things out. Children. Most of our young children, you know, they like routine. They like having their macaroni and cheese 3 meals a day. And so if you change anything, it really throws them into a tailspin. So that, you know, sudden change is frightening to them. So the children also feed off the emotions of their parents and caregivers. So if you panic, they're going to panic also. So stay calm, confident. You know, they'll do the same. And don't forget, just like the animals, they have favorite toys, blankets, activities for the car ride, you know, things to occupy them, and it will make their transition a little easier. Seniors and those with functional needs. I know my parents are in a nursing home here in Del Norte, and I always worry about if something happens, where are they going to go and how are they going to be cared for? We tend to get so busy with our lives that a lot of times our seniors and functional need people, if they're not family members, are forgotten about. So know your neighbors. And, you know, if you get in that flight and flee situation, it's very easy to overlook things like that. But they also have some greater needs. You know, a lot of them utilize wheelchairs, walkers, portable oxygen and their overall mental state. I'm speaking from experience with my parents only, but as they have gotten into their 90s, they tend to not be there all, like they used to. So it's sometimes you have to spend a little bit more time explaining exactly what's going on. Plan accordingly. Will the mobility items fit in the evacuation vehicle? So if your family member uses a motorized wheelchair, are you capable of putting that in there and taking it with you? Or are you just going to grab them, put them in, and worry about it when you get to wherever you're going? Personal items for them is a lot different. Some of them need the adult diapers and the portable oxygen machines and chargers for the portable, I spelled that wrong, I'm sorry, oxygen units. And do they understand what's going on? So those are items that you need to prepare for. Moving along. So this brings me to a go kit. And go kits are different than our 3-day survival kits. I know during power outages and gas outages and times when you just can't get out of your house because of weather events, we have our 3-day supply of water and canned items, non-perishables, things like that. But a go kit should consist of all the items that we mentioned before, and they should be able to be grabbed at a moment's notice. So I'll give you an example. A container, I utilize a small fire safe. It looks like a briefcase, and I have one of those, and it's large enough to hold the documents, again, deeds, insurance cards, social security cards, and so on and so forth. And again, I recommend $50 in cash per person. It's, again, a good number to get you out of harm's way. Personal items. I've taken and put clothes, depending on the season, I change it out seasonally, but personal items for 3 days for adults. We're a little bit more tolerable of not having to change clothes every day, providing, we're not rolling in the dirt or anything. And then 5 sets of clothing for children. We know our kids will want to play and they're going to get dirtier. And so personal hygiene items, the soaps, the shampoos, the wipes, so on and so forth. It's good to have the little travel packs in a container that you can just have on hand all the time. It's set, ready to go at a moment's notice. Another thing is a travel first aid kit. Now, this isn't going to, if you go and cut your arm off, it's not going to help you much, but the scrapes and bumps and bruises that you get while you're loading, or the kids are excited, or things like that, Band-Aids, antiseptic wipes, aspirin for the headache of evacuation, that will probably be very helpful. Another thing is, and I learned this during a hurricane that I was actually working out of the EOC, and that's an old-fashioned paper map or road atlas. When you have no cell signal and you can't use Google Maps and things like that to follow evacuation routes or anything like that, it's really nice to open that Rand McNally Net Atlas that, you spend $25 on and hope you never use it, but it's there and it could, save you and your family. And if you don't know how to read a map, and trust me, there are a lot of people that are not familiar with it, take the time to familiarize yourself, read the scales on how far on this line, according to the mileage scale, are you going to have to go before you come to a gas station or civilization? So that's, in my opinion, very important. The other thing is practice a few times with everybody involved in loading and packing your mode of transportation for evacuation. You can work kinks out that way, and know that when it actually happens, you've practiced. Remember, when you're asked to evacuate, do it. Remain calm, and because you're prepared, you've practiced what you need to do, follow the directions to the letter that are given to you. You know, if a firefighter or a police officer or anybody in a position of authority that is deemed by the incident commander to give you directions to evacuate, do it. And as you travel, you may encounter responders heading in the direction that you came from. They're going there to mitigate and stop the emergency that you're evacuating from. So you have to be careful. We don't want another incident on the way. It's happened many times, responders going, and being a first responder for all those years, we tend to get tunnel vision just like the person that's trying to get away. So none of us are infallible. Just use caution. And then once you get to your destination, let people know you are safe. Call your friends and this, that, and the other, because if your family doesn't hear from you, they're going to worry, and then they can actually start a bigger issue by saying, we haven't heard from these people. Can you check them out? Well, you're taking a first responder away from doing what they really need to do, so they can stay on task if you let people know you're safe. And with that, there's question. If you have any questions, there's my information. Greg said that he was going to put this on their site. So with that being said, if you don't have any questions, I'll give it back to Greg.
And I'll definitely hold out for a second to make sure we have the opportunity for our guests to ask questions. You got the three of us here, boy, and a pretty captive audience at that. So take your time and ask away.
So I really appreciate the information. These have been great presentations, really informative. I have a question. I guess Adam would be the best one to ask, relating to a specific kind of risk assessment. So our cabins at 9,400 feet were, I guess there's two areas that I'm concerned about. One is the zone 2, we have a higher density of trees around that. The ground cover is pretty low, the low level, but it's aspen groves, Douglas fir, and spruce. So it's a little bit higher density there. But I think the biggest concern I have is the cabin has the crawl space underneath is not blocked off. It's got a lattice work on it, so there's nothing combustible under there. But I'm just curious if you have any comments on what level of risk that type of arrangement is, what kind of a priority that should be for me to change that, an open lattice work versus closing it off, and what would be the best type of material to do that.
Was that just the deck or the entire underside of the house? You said
It's so 900 square foot cabin it's up on the pedestals, but the space underneath was open, and there's just a lattice work made out of a synthetic lattice that's kind of decoratively covering it, keeping brush and stuff from rolling underneath there, but it's an ember could certainly blow under there.
So it's a very good question. It's something that in my quick presentation I didn't talk about as much as I do some other times, but the recommendation is to have the underside of decks and structures closed off with that same 1/8 of an inch mesh screening, or closed off with some other means. So when I say some other means, like brick, stucco, something, you name it. But there's a slight caveat I like to say to this that my state agency doesn't like me to say, but I say it anyway, is you need to make sure, though, that you have good access underneath to clean it out, because you're still going to get especially if there's a deck, you're going to get leaves and debris that works its way through. And so I personally would rather see an open house that's clean underneath than a deck or something that's closed off, but nobody's going in there to clean it out. And so at least have it cleaned out, and given the option is just remove that lattice, get some of the fence, the screen, attach it to the back side of it, and put the lattice back up, and then you have that area nice and closed off.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Adam, I'd add to that too. I'm inclined to agree with you about the access. You would want to, and again, Jeffrey, one of the keys as a firefighter that I'm going to do is if I see that opening, I'm going to rip that off to look under there to see what the risk is I'm dealing with. Okay, so somehow make it to where I can look quickly to determine that you don't have anything underneath there and your house is not vulnerable, because that's what we're looking for when we're doing what we call triage, is any vulnerabilities. And if you've got several, that your house might get that different colored rock that says, I don't think I want to spend any time here, when I can easily protect the neighbor's house better. So the rock thing isn't being used as much anymore, but you know, communications are such that if you've got a bad cabin and we're not really inclined to think we have favorable opportunities to save that house, then we're not going to. And the other thing about lattice that I would add is that lattice is awfully dry. And so I would recommend that if you do have vegetation close to that where embers could land on the lattice, treat it with a good fire retardant, what do you call it, mineral spirits or things like that.
It's actually, it's a polymer lattice. It's a synthetic one, but I don't know, what.
Much better.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they won't ignite near as easy. They can burn, but they won't ignite near as easy. So that's great.
And from what I have seen in Jasper's, it's a nice isolated community, which is also its concern, because it's a long access time up to there for firefighters. And I'll be honest, like that turn, some of those turns around Terrace Reservoir, they scare me if somebody's going to be flying around the corner at me. So that being said, I mean, preparedness up there is very critical, but you have a lot of aspen around there, which is good for fires. But you also have a lot of bedding down debris, and you have a lot of that creeping juniper. So those would be some of the key things to focus on removing, and always start closest to the house and work your way out from there.
And Jeffrey, I wanted to apologize to you. I met you a while back and had made the comment that I needed to meet with you and your buddy up there, take the walking tour of Jasper. Unfortunately, the county has kept me so busy. I have not done that. But when you get back into town, please let me know, and I will make it a day to get up there.
Oh, really appreciate it. Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. So, yep. And we had
question here. Still got you on mute. Hannah, can you unmute him?
And I was a little slow, but I dropped a couple links in the chat. So the one is just the website for some information from our agency, and the other is the one that has those construction fact sheets.
You are still here. Yeah, it sure looks like your computer doesn't want to let you talk.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You can always put your question into the chat and I can read it out for you as well, if that works.
Well, in the interim, while we're trying to get that other question out, Art, I want to give you a hard time. I wrote down, you said something about you're rolling around in the dirt in your evacuations. I like that though. But what resonated with me, seriously, I'm just giving you a hard time about that, is you know what, a change of clothes is something a lot of people don't think about. And that's absolutely important. Because you
I
know,
know.
once you go out, you're going to be out for a couple of days at a minimum.
Absolutely. And I know personally, and this is just a personal thing, but when I was in the fire service, I would encourage my firefighters that were on my rig to put a dry pair of socks on the truck, because you can be dirty, your face can be dirty, your hands can be dirty. You put on a clean, dry pair of socks and it really changes your whole perspective of life.
A lot of years out in fires, and I can tell you, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
I'll agree.
Yes, sir. Also, Greg, you have me listed as Saguache County, and it's actually Rio Grande County on your.
I noticed that. I don't know what I was thinking. I saw that in the presentation. I'm like, what did I do?
I think you were testing me. Did I pass?
You passed. I should have mentioned it at the time when I had that slide up, but I hopefully I skipped right over it real fast. I'm so sorry about that. You can give me a hard time back. That's awesome. So the other thing I wanted to also tell you, I appreciate Art more than anything, is that the talking about checking in with your family when you do get out safely. I don't know how many times I've been on a fire when we've had evacuation, and I've gone in as a patrol unit to check on a loved one that, you know, is already, they're 3 states away. They left early and they still hadn't checked in with their family.
Right. And that's an experience thing. During one of the hurricanes, we had a family call, say that their loved ones were not there. So they sent in a police officer to the area. And as he was going to the door, the remainder of the house collapsed and killed him. So those are things that, had that been done, you know, and accidents happen. It's not pointing the finger. It's just, there are things we can do to prevent the loss of life of a first responder.
So Adam, I think you can see that in the chat there. Probably a great one to respond to.
It is. Thanks for the question. So the spacing that I talked about for trees is mostly towards the conifers. So this is a good clarifying question. So aspen doesn't have the same volatile chemicals. It naturally prunes itself, as you can see in this picture, so you don't have those ladder fuels down low. It has a lot more moisture in the leaves. And so oftentimes, if there's a fire going through an area, if it hits a large stand of aspen, it will slow down and sometimes naturally drop to the ground. So having aspen around your house is good. I would, if you have just a few token aspen, I would promote removing more of the conifers around there so the aspen can expand some more as well. The only problem I have with aspen is it is deciduous, so it produces a lot of leaves. So it does fill those gutters. It does fill the little spots in between the deck and every little nook and cranny. So it does give you that extra bit of maintenance you have to do. But I think it's the benefits of aspen being less volatile more than outweighs those little efforts that really only take 5 to 10 minutes a week to keep tidied up.
Yeah, Adam, well said. I mean, that's one of those things that, you know, he's talked about earlier. He just said, you know, aspens tend to be one of those places where in larger fires, if we can't suppress the fire, we may try to encourage it to move towards aspen groves. You know, as he said, they don't have the ladder fuels in the trees. They typically are a little bit wetter than most of the conifers are. So they can be a real asset to us. But that backside is that if those leaves are dry, and boy, you know how crunchy they are in the fall, they may not be an asset to you at that point. They can move fire along the ground rather rapidly.
And I really like the comment there about the leaf blower. I'm a real big fan of them. And nowadays you can get some pretty good electric runs that you can run 20, 30 minutes without, with a charge, so you don't disturb the neighbors much. But if you, let's say you're leaving for the week or the weekend, you go around your house, if you have that nice rock barrier or concrete nearby, paths, you just quickly go around, you blow those leaves and debris before you leave anytime, and it can make a world of a difference. And so I would definitely encourage that. And if you have one, be nice and neighborly and let other people borrow them also. And I guess one other quick note I would say is our agency does have grant opportunities to help communities reduce their wildfire risk. Individuals themselves cannot apply, but a community can apply. Or if you're not a community with like a taxing body to it, we might have some partners that you could work with to apply for these grants. So that's another tool that you can use as a community to reduce your wildfire risk. And if you send me an email, and I'll put my email in the chat, then I can add you to our list. Our next cycle will probably come out about August.
That's perfect, Adam. I'll let you get time for the chat and let them in there. So, well, Hannah's up. That means we're out of time. Darn. Take it away, Hannah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining us today and learning a little bit. This presentation will be available on SJMA's YouTube, as well as the forest website, if you have folks you want to share with or review some of the information shared tonight. Thank you again to our speakers for joining us and sharing their information. We really appreciate it, and it's a very timely topic right now, as we are just moving into fire restrictions tomorrow on the Rio Grande National Forest. And if you would like to stay up to date on these events or other events happening on the forest and in the community, feel free to join SJMA's e-news, and they share events going on across the Rio Grande and San Juan National Forest. You can also send me your email and I can add you to our mailing list as well. And so we'll be right back here next month, as I mentioned earlier, on talk for our Forest Specialist series on wildflowers for June. And thanks again, everyone.
Hannah, let me go ahead and respond to that last question there. When you're next to the Rio Grande National Forest, we have a couple of tools you might be able to use. If you're talking about downfall only, the best tool that I would recommend is stop into one of our ranger stations and get a personal use firewood permit, and then go ahead and pull that downfall off there, and hopefully you can use it to burn on your property, in your stove, whatever. That doesn't clean up the national forest so much. And if there is a real high risk on the forest in your area, what I'd like you to do is contact the ranger station and talk with either the district rangers or the fire management staff to determine options for us. Not quite sure what those options will look like. When I worked on the San Carlos district, one of the things we did is we allowed them to do a little more clearing than the actual firewood permit allowed. But the bottom line was it was a very good treatment for the property. And, it really helped the forest as well as the private land. So reach out to us. We have to have conversations. That's how we work as neighbors.
And sometimes we work jointly with the U.S. Forest Service to do cross-border treatments where we can work on your private side and also on the U.S. Forest Service side. But it all starts with that conversation at the local district ranger office, and then they'll involve us as appropriate.
Yeah, glad you brought that up. That's what Adam's talking about, is the good neighbor authority. And I mentioned that word. We do use that. So let's keep talking, folks. That's how we're going to get this done. All right. Well, on behalf of the Rio Grande National Forest, Art and Adam, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time coming here. Our attendees, thank you. And of course, the San Juan Mountains Association, our host. As Hannah said, sjma.org is their site. If you're interested in the recording, it'll be there. So other than that, I wish everybody a very fine evening and a very fire safe summer.
Thank you. You all be safe.
Yep.
Be well, everybody.